So, I don't usually cover leaks on my channel. They're not verified, they could all be false, and we could just be wasting our time. That said though, I do read them in my own time, and there's been quite a few for Sonic Frontiers. If rumours are true, we may be getting multiple news drops in June. And with information so close, if I were ever to discuss my opinions on the leaks, then now would be the time, because pretty soon we'll know definitively one way or the other. It has been no secret that I have not held the highest expectations for Sonic Frontiers, and these reservations stem largely from its decision to go in an open world format. Even now, I still cannot fully comprehend the idea that Sonic Team has able to do a near 180 degrees turnaround of their design philosophies from the past 11 years in the boosting era of Sonic. And the reason being for this is because I know that people want to see boost in open world because it would be fast, you see a bunch of locations, people think it would be fun to play. But I disagree, because if you can get the boosting Sonic in an open world, then it's just going to be a smaller open world because you cover it in no time flat. And Sonic's slow movement controls when he's got the boosting format are terrible. You do not want to be Sonic Forces Sonic trying to platform and go through narrow canyons at slow speeds. That is if boosting is in the open world, of course, because we don't actually know that. But this is what I'm saying. I just find it so difficult to accept that after so long, Sonic Team are actually willing to not put boost into their main game. For the sake of discussion, while statistically unlikely, if we just assume that a reasonable percent of the more credible leaks are true, then my opinion of Sonic Frontiers as of now is a little bit better than where I've been headed with before. There's been multiple leaks that have suggested now that there will be multiple playable characters. Now, I am someone who is very much a fan of the adventure times with Sonic, and multiple playable characters to me just makes sense because it can pad the game in a non-obtrusive way with multiple ways to play. And especially when they're not all made mandatory, then there's just no downside to it. Of course, we're talking about development times, but this game has had quite the development time. So if there were to be a game that could handle multiple playable characters, it would most certainly be this game. I'm not deluded to the fact that Sonic Team seems to make a meal out of time because Sonic Forces was Sonic Forces, but if this game does actually have multiple playable characters, especially if they play differently, whether that's to the classic degree or to the adventure degree, I don't really care, as long as they play differently from each other, that is something I would be looking forward to. It's been so long since that was properly done, I don't really count the classic Sonic inclusions, so I'm very much looking forward to that if true. One of the bigger issues I've had with Sonic for the past decade is that the play experience expires incredibly quickly. Again, Sonic Force is just a great example of how you can finish that game in under 3 hours if you're really trying. Before, whilst the games were never the massive marathons that other big titles were, they lasted more than 3 hours, and a large part of that was thanks to the fact you could play as multiple characters that either played differently or had different stages, which is why it coming back would be such a big relevant change for the series going forward for this new decade, because it would possibly indicate that there's not only going to be more effort put in, but that the time you get out of your money will be greater, which would be very welcomed after what we've been getting. I say this, however, one of the other rumours is that it's possibly only Sonic who will be playable in the Cyberspace levels, which themselves are also from leaks that suggest that amongst the open world, we'll have more traditional A to B Sonic-styled levels that are handcrafted, specifically made for a platforming experience. But we're hearing that they might only be playable for Sonic himself. This would be pretty disappointing for me, because they sound like they're the real game, apparently, the levels we're used to. I've also been hearing that they're boost, so of course they're not actually going to let the boost go, as much as I wish they did. I don't know how good it will be, because we've seen the boost decline in its recent years, so if they keep that trend, these stages could be pretty miserable. And it also brings up the question, who are the other playable characters, and why is it that they can't enter cyberspace? If it's because they're boosting, so you can't have, Knuckles boostable, fine. But then what about Shadow? He can boost. We already played as Shadow before, so why wouldn't they let you? Is it a narrative reason? Something about all these ghosts and stuff that Sonic seems to be imbued with? That would make sense, I guess. But I don't know. Not having the characters playable there would just make them feel secondary and tacked on. You could be playing as Amy or something, and then you go to the boost level and you're forcefully swapped into Sonic. If it plays well, I suppose that's what matters the most. I just worry that in such a scenario, the other characters in the overworld, their movesets will be really limited. Maybe jump, attack, and spin dash, and that's it. Because the main game is supposed to be in the boost levels, but if only Sonic can play the boost levels, everyone else is sort of just there. That is a little bit of a concern. If these rumors are incorrect, and you can play as more people, or even if they're right but the boost is just really good, and the overworld gameplay isn't bad, then yeah, okay, that might be a bit better, but it's hard to say right now. Relating to this though, some of the leaks do claim that the open world gameplay is very much adventure inspired. I've heard some people say parkour. I really think that's just people trying to get people to like their leaks. I doubt parkour will be involved. I know we're in an open world, but Sonic Lost World was not received well, and we're talking about Sega. Sonic 06 came out, Adventure was gone. Didn't matter if Adventure 2 was very successful, 06 was not. So I think parkour is very, very unrealistic. As if people said Werehog. I know everyone's falling in love with the Werehog today. Wasn't received well then, I doubt it'll be coming back in any meaningful way. But anyway, back to the point at hand. Adventure playstyle in the open world. That doesn't mean they'll get it right. Look at classic Sonic and Sonic Forces, did not get them right. But it would be very interesting to see their more recent attempt at the adventure formula. And again, that just leads to multiple playable characters having more to do. If they are at least as complete as they were in those games, there isn't much to complain about. However, again, we've been hearing some rumors that there is a combat upgrade tree where you get more moves, improve your skills, get more health, get more speed, and you do this on a skill tree that you spend, I don't know what you spend on, but I guess you just beat up people over and over and get XP and spend it on that. That really doesn't sound good to me. Most games that have it tacked on feel just like a grind fest where, oh well, now I gotta farm for ages and ages just to complete this menial task. Or all of the good abilities are restricted and given to you right at the end, which is never fun because you barely get to use them and the game's over. So I'm not too keen about the upgrade tree. I especially don't think Sonic Team are going to do anything crazy with it, and I hope it doesn't get in the way of just having good default controls. That spin cycle people talk about, where you run in a ring around enemies to blow them up instantly, again, that just sounds like a gimmick. It doesn't really sound like it's going to be fun to do, like, wow, I ran in a circle and watched them all explode. There's no real feedback to that. You didn't do anything. I doubt they could make that super challenging. So yeah, the combat side of things and those upgrade skill trees, those I still not really keen on. Something that is actually confirmed is that Ian Flynn of comic book fame will be the writer, or at least the main writer, for Sonic Frontiers. After over a decade of writing that I and many others have not been a fan of, I am very interested to see how Flynn handles writing for the games. He's been working with these characters for an incredibly long time, but in that time we've seen him take them in different directions. Now, whether that was due to his own opinions or due to how he was told to do it, with Shadow, for instance, we've seen more than one way of writing him, with the recent way of writing him not being up my lane. But I know that the same man who wrote that Shadow wrote really good Shadow as well, so it's a bit of a conflicting... It really depends on the direction that this game wants to go in. That's really what will make the difference. But overall, I am optimistic. I'm hoping that he's going to bring at least some consistency. Will the characters be in character? In the 2000s, you could probably come up with a list of character traits and see most of them reasonably expressed in the media that came out at the time. In the last 10 years, those traits didn't really hold up, and the ones they were replaced with seem to change from game to game. So I'm hoping that the characters this time, if they won't be what they used to be, which is what I would want, but if they're not going to be that, I hope they at least redefine what the characters are and make it clear that, okay, well, this is now what this character is, and we're going to try and stick to this from now on. As for the angle that the actual game's narrative may go, we've been hearing calls of Sonic having amnesia, and about these ghost girls, and anthropomorphic villages, maybe human villages on these Starfield Islands. I don't really know how much of that to take in and how much not. Amnesia Sonic, we've already done an Amnesia plotline over multiple games with Shadow, but I guess the target audience these days don't even know about that, so we'll see. If they're going for a reboot, I can see what they're doing here, a soft reboot, that is. Again, I just can't really comment too much. Inherently, I'm not super keen on the idea, though, I'll say that. By far the greatest possible leak that could be hopefully true, though, is the Chao Garden's return. This is something I genuinely want. I would be so happy to see the Chao Garden to come back. At the same time, there are ways it could come back and still not be good. The biggest question is, will it at least be as good as Sonic Adventure 2's Chao Garden? Because it's been over 20 years, it really should be, at minimum, as good as that one. So I mean, having karate, having the different races, having 3 gardens, though if they play around with how that works for the open world, that's fine. But having the Chao be able to grow into the wide array of different forms, and not each form being static, like how you've got Charmander, Charizard. With Chao, is you've got the childhood state, where they change gradually, and then you've got adult state, first stage, where they get a new form, but that form slowly changes, and then they get their final adult state that might be a hybrid of 2 depending on how you raise them. Very customizable, very much a variety of Chao. And that's not even to mention features like getting the items they can wear, the items they can play with, the Chao Kindergarten, the Chao Black Market. This would be a great way of giving other playable characters a bit more to do. So let's say it's the worst case where you can't use someone like Amy in Cyberspace and her gameplay is kind of limited. If you could at least bring these other characters into the Chao Garden and have some of them when they pet Chao make them go hero, some of them when they pet Chao make them go dark. Maybe some people pet Chao and it brings them to neutral. That could be a cool one. But yeah, that would at least give you something to do with these other characters, which would be nice. However, all of this I've been saying at least as good as Sonic Adventure 2. I would want to see more features, maybe more tiny animals you could give them to give them a different form. Maybe a new stat with all of the new evolutions associated to it. Or maybe a new type, like how you have Hero, Neutral, Dark. Maybe they'll add a Cyber Chao type, I don't know. But I would really hope to see new features on top. But at the very least, if we get the same features Adventure 2 had, but with updated Chao graphics and no compromises, then that would be great. If we get a lesser Chao Garden, then it would need to do at least something really well, and the main game would also need to be very good for me to maybe not mind it as much. But yeah, Chao Garden, man, that would be so good to see that back in some way or form. And we've been seeing a lot of Chao media recently, so this is possible. I don't know if I fully believe it. To be honest, I've not believed Chao Garden would ever come back for a long time, but if it does, I'll be there for sure. Those were most of the leaks I wanted to talk about. Most of the others come off as just wish list. To be fair, a lot of these ones did too. But I wanted to only go over the most credible leaks. There was one about supersonic though, where apparently we're going to be using that a lot sooner than we're used to. No longer as a last game or a final reward, but as a method of beating bosses. I'm not sure how likely this is, because if anything, in the last decade of Sonic, Sega has been against the use of supersonic, quite heavily actually. So we'll see about that one. But this was a lot to cover, and again, in about a month's time, we will hopefully find out how much of them are correct and how much are not. It would be great to actually play with some real information, but since I haven't really spoken about the leaks, I wanted to do it whilst it was still relevant. What would be the point when it's done? So this was a bit of speculation based on what little we've heard. Here it is. What did you guys think about it? I've heard all sorts, maybe you've heard even more. Let me know in the comments below. I'm just hoping that the information we get next month is actually good. Thank you for watching all the way to the end. I hope you have a great day. This is the Mighty Emperor, signing off.